Hello and welcome back for part 2 of lesson 21.1 of Algebra 1B Credit 4. So notice in this problem what we're going to be doing is using factoring as a way to solve equations. In fact, there's something new in all of our factoring problems, which is an equal sign, hence the word equation. Equals, equation, kind of sounds like they go together, right? So the first step we're going to do is write the equation in this form. Right now, as you notice, it's not in that form, not yet anyways, because there's a 5 on this side. It's not 0. What's the opposite of a positive 5? Negative 5, right? So I'll subtract 5 from both sides, and I'll get x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals, what's 5 take away 5? 0, right? Now you'll notice that I did not put these two together, though they're very close together, because whereas the negative 4 has an x, the negative 5 does not. So what I'll do is again identify my a, b, and c value. And I'll list out some factors. One has to be negative, and I'm going to see which one adds to get me negative 4. Try it out, pause, and you should have found that these two factors add to get me negative 4, and that would be x minus 5 and x plus 1. So it tells me to factor, which we did, and we've been practicing doing that for a while. The next thing it asks us to do is solve the equation using the zero product property. So just so you know, 0 times any number would be 0. It's one of the first things we learned when we were little, but just in case you forgot, what that means is that either this factor is 0 or this factor is 0. So what we're going to do is, since I don't know which one it will be, I'm going to go ahead and solve both. X minus 5 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. So when I solve equations out, what is the opposite of subtracting 5? Plus 5, right? So that would be x equals positive 5. What's the opposite of a positive 1? Negative 1, right? So that would be x equals negative 1. The next thing it asks us to do is to graph, just to see that it matches the answers that we got here, match here. So hopefully we'll find that our x-intercepts are negative 1. That's the hope. What we're going to do is we're going to actually use our graphing calculator or Desmos. I'll write that down, desmos.com, to create a table of values. So either your calculator or Desmos to create a table of values and graph. So what I'm going to do off screen is kind of use my graphing calculator. I'll put up another video just so you guys can know how do I do that? How do I use Desmos? How do I get my own table of values on a later video? Or you can always come into the center and ask any one of our staff members and teachers, and we'll go ahead and help you out with that. All right. So I was able to find the following values using my graphing calculator. Of course, if you do want to learn how to do that, again, you can come into the center. We can help you out with that, and I will also put up a video showing you how do I use my graphing calculator to make up these values that she's putting on the screen, because I want to know how to do that too. And it's super cool. So I've came up with these values. As you can see, if I graph these out, it's negative 2, 7. Ooh, hopefully that'll put there. Negative 1, 0. Hopefully my dots don't go away, as I'm seeing that they are kind of. So I'll make sure to adjust how I'm putting them on the screen so you can see that they are forming a pattern. A pattern is being formed. Yes, that's going to go off screen a little bit. Sorry, my graph was not long enough. 2, even further down. Let's see. 4, 5. So I can kind of see it's already coming back up. In fact, next one, 5, was 0. So that's 1 point I did not put in. So I do have an intercept at -1 and 5. If I draw this out, just so you know, it's a sketch, so I'm not perfect, and neither is my graph going to be perfect, but about there's be my parabola, and you can see yes. So if I graph it, I can verify that yes, these will be my factors, x equals 5 and x equals -1. Now the reason you had to graph it was just to verify it. In fact, on the next one, I believe they're going to have us also factor and then graph to verify. You won't have to do this for every single one, but just so you can see that they do match. Okay, so here you have x squared plus 7x equals -6. So again, I'm going to write this in. And I'm going to do my first step, which is to change it into standard form. So opposite of a -6 is a +6. And I'll be left with x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0. What I'll do is identify my a, b, c, and I'll list out my factors and see what adds to get me 7. As you can see, it was these factors, x plus 1 and x plus 6 equals 0. Again, anything times 0 is 0, so I'm going to set this factor equal to 0 and this factor equal to 0, and I'm going to solve it out. That would be x equals -1 and x equals -6. Again, to verify that these are the solutions, because we're going to try and see if that works out, we're going to use our graphing calculator or use Desmos.com to create a table of values for x squared plus 7x plus 6. So again, off screen, I'm going to use my graphing calculator to kind of work that out. Alright, so my values were -60, -60, -60, -5, -4. Sorry, that's not a great 5, but you get it. That would be -4, -6, -3, -6, -2, -4, and -1, 0, and then of course 0, 6. So if I graph these out, that would be that one, -4, -4. So I'm going to try and graph that out. -4, -6. Alright, -3, -6 as well. So try and make sure that those get written down. And then -2, -4. And then -1, 0. Sorry, those keep disappearing and I'm trying to make them stay. And then 0, 6. So if I kind of sketch my graph out, again, it's not going to be perfect, but there's my graph. And you can see, hey, there's my intercept of -6 and my intercept of -1. So they do match, as you can see there. Alright, so, well, on this next one, we're going to be doing a word problem. It says the length of a rectangular bedroom is 2 feet wider than its width. So here's my bedroom. It's going to be a rectangle. And it says the length, my length is 2 feet more than, I think that's going to be a plus, than its width. So width I don't know, so I'm going to write a W for width. And since a rectangle usually has those things, right, it's the lengths are going to be the same, and the widths are going to be the same. Since I didn't know what the width is, I'm going to use W, and it says the area of the bedroom is 120 feet. So area is equal to length times width, just so you know. So L stands for length and W stands for width. So here I have area is 120. My length is 2 plus W. And my width is just W. So I'm going to simplify this out. W times W and W times 2. And that would be 2W plus W squared equals 120. I'm going to move this around. So I'm going to keep it in standard form. And remember, in standard form, I have to have one side equal to 0. And of course, neither side is equal to 0. So I'm going to move this 120 over. What is the opposite of a positive 120? Negative 120, right? So I'm going to put this 120, take away 120 is 0. And I'm going to put this in order because I'm used to, for standard form, I'm usually used to, a letter squared plus whatever that coefficient is times the letter plus a variable, right? So these stand for variables. So here I'm going to write W squared first, the positive 2W next, and the minus 120 last. So now I have my A, B, and C value. So again, I'm going to find my factors for 2 is my B value, negative 120. And again, I'm just going to list out my factors. I'm listing out all my positive factors just so you know first. I know one of them has to be negative, so I'll make all these negative, why not? And again, if you're not sure, well, what is my factors for 120, we can just try and divide 120 divided by some different numbers. So I can try 120 divided by 4, right? And that would be 30. All right, I can also do 120 divided by 5. And that would be 24. And I can continue this process, let's try 6 and just continue going and just seeing what I can find. I'm not going to use 7 because I don't know if you tried 120 divided by 7, but that probably doesn't work. But try it out. Pause here if you want to try figure out a few more factors, okay? Alright, so I found that to be 20. We can try 8 and 15. We can also try 10 and 12. So I made all of these factors negative, and I'm going to see which ones add to get me 2, which would be this one, right? Because they add to get me 2. So my two factors for W are W minus 10 and W plus 12. And if I solve each one of these out, W minus 10 equals 0 and W plus 12 equals 0, I would find that W is equal to positive 10 and W is equal to negative 12. Now I know we have two answers, so we're like, which one do we use? In the real world, is there any such thing as negative numbers at all? No, which is why we're not going to use this answer, but we're going to use W plus 10. I'm sorry, W equals 10. So if the width is now, we know, 10 feet long, how long is the length? That would be length equals 2 plus 10, which is what? 12, right? So that means our width is 10 and our length is 12. Awesome. And we will finish up the rest of the lesson in part 3.